Hello everyone, my dear and valued friends. Today I'm coming to you with an amazing video, my friends. It's very important for you to watch the video until the end, my friends. Now, before we get into the video, let me remind you that the topic we discuss is not investment advice. It is for educational purposes only. In other words, the analysis is based on past price movements. My friends, all of you have had times when you've lost money in the market, right? Where does this happen? This is exactly where the question everyone is eagerly waiting for lies. Where do you get stopped out? So, is it just a coincidence that everyone gets stopped out at the same places? Do you need to ask yourself whether this is a trick of the market or if this is how it's supposed to be? Or you also need to ask yourself the opposite, that maybe it isn't this, my friends. Look, never forget this. I'm going to share a very important piece of information with you here. Whenever the volume is about to peak, price manipulation movements are always involved, my friend. Now, we've looked at the price movements, right? We've chosen a coin, my friends. We're analyzing its past price movements. Right now, there's a very sharp sell candle that has formed, my friends. After such a sharp sell candle forms, in other words, there's been a sufficient pullback. So when we look at it like this, we can see that there's been a pullback from this point to here, my friends. Now, how do people manipulate things here? Of course, since the price rises sharply in smaller time frames from these levels, very few people actually enter here anymore. What we're trying to look at here is how people manipulate things in larger time frames, right, my friends? Now the price is starting to move here, isn't it? It's showing a very strong upward movement. So what do people do, my friends? People who see this start placing buy orders around here. After placing buy orders, they set their stop below the candle and aim for at least a 1 to 2 risk reward ratio to the upside, right? All of you have probably opened positions with at least a 1 to 2 ratio in your trade. So pay attention to the most voluminous candles, my friends, especially those with a 1 to 2 ratio. So if the candle that forms within a high volume candle does not provide us with a forward looking signal, my friends, of course, the training for these topics will be covered at much more advanced levels. For example, I will explain in future lessons what it means when a candle forms within another candle, like this one here. But what I'm trying to say here is that if it doesn't settle, the price can create manipulation after high volume candles and sharply bring the price down, my friends. Look, I'm explaining it to you with examples, aren't I? Again, in the same way here, the price enters an upward phase. After entering the upward phase, people start identifying buying points from here, as we can see. Everything is out in the open. After people buy here, they set their stop loss just below this area. For example, they set stop losses at 1 to 1, maybe even 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 ratios like this, my friends. Look, for example, when you look directly, you can see that even 1 to 2 levels haven't been reached, my friends. A manipulation candle appears, and then the price moves sharply upward again, my friend. People who see this say, oh, the price is running away. They enter from here as well. From these areas, they immediately open a second position below this candle, my friends. Look, after opening the second position, they create a 1 to 2 position, and bam, the trade is concluded right here, my friends. You can see the same thing happening in the movements over here as well, my friends. So in fast candles moving upward, if the price is in a certain area, you draw Fibonacci, or if the price is not in a supply demand zone, it means that manipulative areas are being created here. Look, the same scenario is set up here as well. It looks like the price is going up, making people buy here. After making people buy, bam, the price moves downward, my friends. You know, this is what they call FOMO, like buying and such. So not getting caught up in these things will be much more important for you, my friends. In other words, it's beneficial to be careful. If the most voluminous candles are at a very important level, they can be considered, but if they're not at important levels, if they formed in a random area, you need to observe the price here. Look at what it's trying to do here. It's actually giving you signs that it can't go further in these areas. The candles are very sharp. I mean, the downward candles are moving very sharply. These are also some preliminary information for you, my dear friends. Thank you for listening and watching. This is not investment advice. You can subscribe, leave a comment, or give a like. These are things that will make us happy. See you in the next video, my dear friends.